Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts, Chris Noble and Bill Paratzman. On this podcast, Chris and I offer a spontaneous, ongoing conversation about how music is intertwined with healing and consciousness. Our first season helped lay the foundation and build some of the superstructure for what we want to do here in Season 2, where we'll be welcoming some intriguing guests, going deeper into ancient mysteries and wisdom, and cultivating your background knowledge and curiosity. We hope these discussions will inspire your own study and practice of the musical and healing arts, and that your contribution to advancing world consciousness will be satisfying for you and transformative to those around you. Let's get started.
I had an idea last week that I completely forgot about, and you told me about it this morning, and I thought it was your idea. I didn't realize that.
Well, this is because of your story last week about like exercise, doing an exercise meeting. Like
yes. Yeah.
Running with your buddy, who's actually the part of the meeting, brainstorming, talking, logisticizing, breathing, hanging out, just like all of that sounded so amazing. I'm like, well, how can we? Oh no, you were the one that said, how can we do a men's group out of something like this, right?
That's a good point. And I love those conversations because then it's out of my mind, and then brilliant minds like yours will retain that and remind me of it later. So thanks for that, Bill.
Yeah,
and
that's about where it ends. I haven't figured anything else out. We have to develop this right now.
Well, you know what? So the friend of mine who I was doing that running meeting with, and we were speaking, I think, offline about that, Bill, where it's like, you're a fan of how Steve Jobs would do that with, he was very famous for doing walking meetings around the block of the Apple building and stuff. So this is not obviously a new concept, but however, when I was running with my friend doing this running meeting, we were also working on putting together a men's group. So, and the men's group that we're looking to put together and we'll have pretty soon ready to rock and roll, are going to be pretty much just all online events that you can attend live or watch after the fact. And we're trying to encourage men to get into a lot of these ancient practices, breathwork, meditation, as well as Qigong, how to tap the body, move the body, different pressure points on the body to activate energy, and also just to prolong and your life and increase, vitality and your energy levels and raise testosterone and all these things in a healthy ways. Testosterone gets a bad rep most of the time, but it's actually, for men especially, it's an extremely important hormone. And when you have high amounts of it, it's actually extremely healthy and good and vital for your life force. So we're leading these men's workshops to really bring these teachings. We're also bringing in brotherhood bonding and ancient warrior practices that warriors would do before going into battle, where they actually would have platonic snuggling, hugging for long periods of time, eye contact, eye gazing, things that a lot of the time the modern man would be very uncomfortable to do now because of just programming and the fact that we're still very sensitive as men, I think, when it comes to like sexuality and being open with just various types of affection and connection and physical touch. But these ancient warriors, they knew the power, just like a lion in the wild knows the power of platonic, male bonding, and or as my friend calls it, same-sex erotic male bonding. And the erotic element is that most of the time these men were naked. And when you're naked, it also, if anyone can think of an example of maybe you used to go to the gym or you still go to the gym, and when you're in the change room, you're usually surrounded by the people of, your same gender, typically. I know this day it's a little different, but we're just going to be a little binary for today's purpose in talking about this. And as my friend says, if you don't identify as male or female, choose your own adventure. Anyway is fine. So just take the information and do with it as you wish. And when I was growing up as a boy in the men's change room, I always found it really refreshing being around a bunch of naked men, because it kind of took away status. For one, you don't have clothes to judge someone by now. You don't even see like what kind of watch they're wearing anymore to see how much money they make or what kind of job they might have. Your social status gets extinguished when you're naked, and you all come together on the same level. There's no hierarchy anymore. And that's really important too. So this is to say, we're doing a lot of these things in these men's groups And one of the main components that we're trying to weave a lot of this stuff in is actually through sound and music. So one of the things we do at the beginning, at the end, is we ohm to make a sound of creation that just binds and connects everyone together. And we also do a little sing along at the end while we're in a bit of a meditation to just get your voice activated and to feel all, as you know, Bill, better than most, the power of song and the power of singing with other people if you're able to. And it's so maybe I'm just kind of saying all that because these are things that we're working on right now. Maybe we can talk about the sound and music components of these perhaps in this episode today of how specifically with men's groups, of course this pertains to men's or women's groups as well, but we can maybe focus in today on men's groups and the power of sound and music for men, because I think just to start this off, one of the main things that might be really important for a lot of men to start getting into is to get comfortable with your feminine side. And your feminine side is, we're talking the feminine energy, which represents your right brain, which represents creativity, which represents sensitivity in terms of feeling things, understanding what your emotions actually mean, using them as a GPS guidance system versus something that is just annoying and we want to suppress that. So perhaps, I don't know, things like music and sound could be used in these men's groups to really promote getting in touch with your feminine, with your creative side more. What do you think about that, Bill? I'm just curious.
It's a brave endeavor because we got a lot of gender stereotypes to bust through. As you're talking, I'm thinking of when I went to like middle school. I was at a private school, everybody wore uniforms. And part of the reason for that was, as you were pointing out, to sort of level the playing field. You didn't have to worry about what to wear, and you didn't have to worry if anybody, you know, was wearing something like better than you because you're all wearing the same thing. Um, that's sort of a deal now in government schools, although I don't think they enforce it too much here in California. But normalizing your appearance is a big part of allowing other things to come to the table, right? That's with clothes on. So, and we're going to get banned from YouTube probably by talking about all this. But
Oh yeah, I guess we got to be careful now,
oh, what
especially
the
I'm in
heck?
Canada and it's even worse up here. So,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did come for you.
well, I when I post a video now, I have a whole crazy checklist of things I have to be filling out. We won't even get into that, but it's an interesting new world we're living in, to say
Yeah,
the very least.
it's crazy. And which, by the way, side note, maybe we should consider taking the show to Rumble, which doesn't do any of that.
I post everything I do on Rumble as well, and you can link the two together. Yes, we should do that, Bill, because it
Yeah.
seems to be the way the world's moving right now.
Yeah, away from the we have to be careful even when you say these things, away from Al Gore's rhythm.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I love that. That's a good
Yeah,
one. I'm gonna have
we're
to
using
steal
that
that.
on another podcast because we talk about that particular thing so much.
I love it. Awesome.
But lest we digress. So if you're now unable to hear the rest of this podcast on YouTube, look for us on Podbean
Or Rumble.
or Rumble, and we'll start to make the transition. So first of all, I love that you're doing this, and you're absolutely right. There's so much stigma around, particularly white males these days, and it's not positive. Being able to change that and get back to, I'm going to say, a more indigenous, a more First Peoples kind of appreciation of what it means to be male is important.
Yeah.
And this is a whole different world where podcasting could go crazy because the idea of a men's group is so incredibly important. I've been in men's groups and there's nothing quite like it. Couples groups is a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter your gender. I know that women's groups are different matter. A reporter back in the 80s did a book called Nine Parts of Desire, and her source information for the book was visiting women in Muslim cultures. And after you go behind the walls, women in Muslim cultures are actually much more free than you would guess. And that was enlightening for me because it shows like two aspects of this. We think, oh my gosh, Muslim women are completely covered. In some parts of Sharia law, that's necessary. But that's in public. So there's a presentation that women in Muslim cultures have that is well thought out and is grounded in like a spiritual uh, understanding of women's roles. Go behind the walls, and the private expression of femininity is much different. Why couldn't it be that way for men? Instead of being all this crazy sort of bad masculinity.
Yeah, toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah,
And
and
I understand where this is the interesting thing. So that whole toxic masculinity thing, it comes from an unhealed masculine. It just comes from men who are
there you go. Yep.
not healed and not in a place to view their emotions, understand their emotions, channel their life force energy, channel their trauma, anger, frustration, their sexual energy, which is a huge one. Learning how to move your sexual energy as a man is very different than as a woman, obviously, and really great knowing how that operates, because in the not so distant past, this was common practices and teachings. I mean, I'm just getting into the area of qigong, which is an ancient Chinese, practice from at least 2 to 3,000 years ago, if not far longer. And the entire purpose of that is how to channel your life force energy. And so they have all these general techniques, and with slight variations depending on if you're a man or a woman,
Right.
because they circulate energy differently, being a divine masculine versus divine feminine. And again, once again, if you feel like you are gravitating towards a particular energy signature in your body, whichever that body type is, if it's feeling like a masculine energy signature, then you just do the masculine exercises. So it's whatever you're feeling personally drawn to. That's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, it's teaching you how to deal with these energies, how to move them, how to channel them, how to utilize these things as forces of positivity versus what they become when they're ignored and suppressed, which become the toxic masculinity
Right. The
stereotypes that we hear
patriarchy
all
that
about.
we love to bag on, right?
Yeah, and the patriarchy screws both sexes over equally. Men have horrific body image issues that don't usually get discussed very often. Most of my friends growing up had very debilitating body image issues, and I remember being a soundboard for most of my guy friends. And it's interesting, and I think a lot of women actually like to hear sometimes that just it's the same on our side too. The patriarchy's not been nice to us either, and it creates these norms and ideas of the perfect man, quote unquote, and what you're supposed to look like and how you're supposed to behave as that typical alpha warrior type, which is great to have as an archetype. But there's other archetypes, and you are an individual that can fall into any of those things, and you're beautiful whichever way you are. So, when you're taught like, oh, you're only going to, to be a man, you got to be like strong, and being strong means you don't ever cry or things like that. Right. And it's just these are these age old stereotypes that obviously just don't work and aren't true at all. If anything, getting more into these men's groups, getting more into your emotions, using sound and frequency and things like that to open yourself up to these things and to move this energy, to move these emotions. That's the strength, because then you have to become better at being vulnerable, being able to just wear your emotions more publicly and just let them come as they are. That takes extreme courage and strength. That makes you strong. That actually doesn't dampen your strength, your ferociousness as a masculine entity. It actually makes you stronger. And sound and music, I mean, some of the best tools we have for these exercises, I think, because all these exercises pair better with music. I think.
Yes, I
Biased
agree.
opinion.
No. I completely agree with
So.
you. And music allows you to unlock the other aspects that are not being worked in the moment. So if it's a physical pose that you're doing and you're bringing some mental concentration to that, music can add the emotional and spiritual aspects of it, and help you practice across all four of the areas um, of yourself: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. I have a exhibit A that I can't actually play, although I would encourage everybody to go and do this. So recently, I got to watch a whole series. One of the main themes in the series was how to deal with toxic masculinity. And it was brilliantly handled, right down to the music. And I've mentioned this before, but for anyone who hasn't got it, go out and watch Ted Lasso beginning to end. This is the story of a coach who figures out how to unlock a more balanced masculine feminine in every one of the players on his team. And he does that without any knowledge of soccer. He's able to get this done. And it's a fascinating study. The writing is brilliant on this, and the transformation that takes place over, what is it, 3 seasons? It's short, is remarkable to see how this happens. One of the things that I want to tie into about this is that Coach Lasso knows each of his players is going to respond a little differently to the encouragement. And the coach's job is to figure out how to get that out of each one of the players. Well, guess what? Each of us responds a little differently to music too. So if you can figure out the music that you need to unlock you on whatever the particular opportunity is that you're looking at, that's a great study, because then with that music, you can always unlock that thing to which you're offering the most resistance. And just to pick one from what you said earlier, Chris, getting naked and hugging a whole bunch of guys might be a resistance that you need to pay attention to. I'm not sure what music you'd use for that right now. Right? If that's you, I don't even know what music I would use for that. But there's a way probably in on that and every other thing that offers resistance that music can help break through for you.
And I'll offer one suggestion what music might work in those situations, because as extreme of as an example as that might sound to some, or maybe it's not extreme at all to some, it's obviously going to really depend on the individual who hears this, of getting
sure,
naked.
Yeah. Where you are, your cultural background.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of aspects.
Exactly. But, some of the music that my friends like to use when we're doing these exercises is they tap into their own heritage, and they like to play, like for my friend who's got Scottish heritage, he plays like, some Gaelic music sometimes when we're doing these things. Other friend of mine who's has more of an Arabic and more like he's Egyptian background, we're going to play more music from that neck of the woods, which I particularly love. And so on and so forth. We get some more tribal kind of percussion rhythms going, especially in the breathwork stuff. Breathwork, and I'm doing an event this Wednesday. The episode will have aired by then, but anyway, I'm doing monthly breathwork workshops online that I play music, and my friend leads the breathwork. But my music specifically is going to have a lot of percussion, a lot of beats in it, because we call it breathwork and beats for a reason, because it's when you're doing breathwork to a rhythm, it becomes even more shamanic, even more transformative. Your body just gets into this rhythm, and you can feel the Kundalini energy moving up through your spine. It's just, oh my God, it really is like doing a psychedelic. And breathwork with the mixture of music, for me personally, has got to be one of the most amazing ways to get high on your own supply. And you really can, especially for people that are maybe working with addiction and moving through a period of addiction. Breathwork, and one of my very close friends who does breathwork, he is now sober. He's been sober for 3 years now, and finds for him breathwork is just one of the best substitutes for his drug habit in the past, because it's an amazing drug. It's called oxygen.
Yeah, exactly. I love you're using beats. This is something that I didn't pioneer it, but I thought a long time ago, why all this ambient music? It's so boring. Can't we move things along here? Can't we add some rhythm to this and make it work? And I'm sitting here at a synthesizer that's got, hundreds of different built-in beats that I can use. Why not do that, right?
Yeah.
And add that component to it. Even add some rhythmic harmonic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And sort of begin to activate a different kind of energy in the body. I mean, there are chakras that are all about movement. And if you're not moving, sitting there just like stone still cold, trying to deal with a chakra that has music that's just ambient droning behind you, it's like, hey, there's a disconnect here for me, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you're allowing the separateness of the music to create the unity of the emotion.
I love that. That's
right?
Well said. I didn't even think about it that way.
I mean, oftentimes we can't relate to each other on any other level, but when you pull apart and get down to it, if you're authentic and courageous enough, you can find that we all feel the same things, even though we might not look the same way or even speak the same language. And that's powerful.
Yeah, it's the unity. I mean, one of the things that these men's workshops do so well is this sense of unity. You really start to understand that while we all are different and all have our individual experience, we are also all from the same place, the same source of consciousness. And as human beings, we really are all related in one way or another, physically, but also, of course, spiritually, and we can feel that, I think, at its most palpable when we're in a group with other men. Could be a couple of men, could be a large number, doesn't really matter, but you really feel that connectivity. And I think one of the things we've lost a lot, especially in the last couple of years with with everything like pandemics to lockdowns to now remote working, which is great, don't get me wrong, I love that, but also taken to extremes, we're losing that in-person connection. And one of the things you can never replicate, with online and with the non-connections things, are this community, the sense of cohesive community, the sense of camaraderie that you feel at these types of men's or women's workshops, where you get to really connect with your brothers and your sisters or whatever, depending on what kind of workshop you're going to. And that's something we need more of, because we used to do this all the time back in the day, and we always felt that sense of cohesion. We trusted each other more because of that, and we ended up having more peace and trust amongst our tribe, amongst our community, because of these exercises that we just have completely lost today. And if anything, a lot of the times, my friends who are far, far more active in this space, it's shut down. It's censored. These types of things literally get shut down. And my friends who promote a lot of men's sexual health education have now gone through at least 8 or 9 Instagram profiles, at least, same with Facebook. I mean, they literally get deleted, not even just shadow banned or shut down. They're actually deleted. Why? That's a whole other episode in and of itself. But you got to wonder sometimes, really, like, why, especially men's sexual health. Like,
I know.
we need that. That's important.
Women wouldn't have that trouble.
There's a weird double standard with that, and I want both sides to have it. Women absolutely should have it, but so should we. Exactly. So should men.
So that's what Nostr is going to be for. The next internet, where everything's distributed and nothing's censored. And so check out Nostr and a way to get into it if you haven't been there yet. Nostr. Yeah. It's called a different moniker for it on iOS devices, but check it out. This is an amazing opportunity that we have, because right now, with all of the call it what it is, all the censorship that's going on, and the very real human needs that we have to stay connected, to stay bonded, to be able to trust one another, all of that, combined with a media that is forcing us apart and playing on our worst, kind of proclivities, and feeding them into the algorithm. There, I said it. We've got a real opportunity here to get back to humanity and to get back to what matters. And clearly, that's a threat to the powers that be, and it ought to be, because when we trust one another and we really get one another and we understand how each other feel, that's a really amazing power. I think of my homeless buddies. If homeless people were ever to organize, they could do all kinds of stuff, because it is a close-knit community that's built on a lot of trust. I mean, if you're going to fall asleep and your buddy's not watching your shoes, right? So you learn reciprocity in that community. You may not have a house, but you definitely have friends. And that's something that a lot of people who have houses, couldn't say. Watch my house while I'm gone for 3 weeks, Chris, right? It's like, yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. Right? It's not the same thing as watch my shoes while I sleep.
Well, it's a good point.
We've got this opportunity. And from where we sit, here in the music world, there's a lot of support for it. Someone back in the day noted that the age of Aquarius is all going to be about poets and musicians and artists. And they're the people who are going to lead us. Well, here's one of the reasons why. It's because our society has become fractured to the point that it's only poetry and music and art that can put it back together, that can reassemble it in a way that will make sense and that will help us going forward. It's not going to happen.
And I think things are so kind of chaotic right now that you need abstract learning like through art and music
Yes.
and things, film and whatnot. It's the best way to, I feel like, teach and educate and convey messages in this day and age that are actually going to somehow distill all the craziness going on in some kind of a articulate way, right? It's like you can't just write about all this stuff, which is great too, but it's like the music and the art is able to bring that extra uncommunicatable element of what's happening right now in this Aquarian age, which is a beautiful thing. Like, if you watch the news, you're going to see a very different story of what's going on. But if I just tune into myself and go into a brief bit of meditation and just ask my own inner compass, what do I feel, this new world that we're moving into is, I get very excited. It's actually really, really exciting when you can take out all of the noise and the very loud, pinning against each other, let's just say, that comes from the mainstream on all fronts, not just the news, but government, everything. It's just always, how are we different from each other? How are we different from each other? How are we hating against each other? Who hates who? Who hates who? Who said the worst thing to this person? And that person's going to fight back with that worst thing. And it's boom, 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 boom. Always just pitting each other against each other rather than uniting and coming together. And, one of the things that I've been trying to put my own focus on is I will be aware of our differences. That's important. But I'm going to focus on our similarities. Yeah. So when I'm in a social setting and we're very much in disagreement, great. I want to be able to disagree with anybody and still give you a hug at the end of it, and go walk away and be like, wow, we are completely on different pages. And I wish them all the best. They seem to have a lovely family and great. Does it mean I have to hang out with them every day? No. But I can go through this life with love and respect towards everyone and disagree with almost everybody on everything. It just shouldn't matter. We should just still have that love and overall respect, which comes with these types of exercises that involve and promote cohesion and cooperation and collaboration versus competition. And that is also the old Piscean age that we just came from, was competition based.
Yep.
And now we're moving into a cooperation world where you can even feel it when there's old sales or marketing campaigns that you see that are using an old style of marketing where it's very much like, be better than everyone else and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it just doesn't land anymore. Those things don't really resonate. It's when, hey, grow with everyone, become a part of a community and grow together with, like collaborate. Like, those things are the sales pitches or the marketing things that actually land now, because we just aren't operating from that old perspective.
It's changed already. We're already in the new, whatever the new is.
I think from 2012 was when it shifted into the.
We'll look back on that date, right? It's an important one. We all thought everything was going to change in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, when the last trumpet sounds, right?
Although I got a really brief story I want to share. This is going to be a little bit of a tangent, Bill.
Yeah.
So David Adair, he is a rocket scientist that I think the movie October Sky was based off of. Yep. He's a genius from the southern states, Texas, I think, and utter genius as a child, building rockets that NASA scientists were just, what? How is this kid doing that? So his story is amazing. The movie October Sky does not go into any of the cool parts of the story whatsoever. It plays the most mainstream version of that guy's life. He has, from his own mouth, I've heard so many stories. He talks about being, as a 16 or 17-year-old, brought into secret programs that involved reverse engineering alien spacecraft technology. He had encounters as a child and as an adult with aliens or ETs. That's where he thinks he got most of his designs, were downloads from extraterrestrials. It's amazing stuff. Watch any of his stories. He's a great talk. He's also a great storyteller. Fantastic. Anyway, he tells amazing stories. So he's involved in many, many space programs. He's privy to a lot of incredible knowledge. He talked about in 2012, July of 2012, and you can Google this, because a couple of years later, NASA did release an article talking about this phenomenon. So there was a corona mass ejection that came from the sun. And what that kind of ends up looking like, it's like when you're sweating at a workout and you move quickly and little wicks and beads of sweat fly off your body, that's the equivalent of what's kind of flying off the sun, except those wicks of sweat are flying at close to the speed of light and are exceptionally catastrophic when they hit our planet. And so on 2012, there was a corona mass ejection heading directly for planet Earth in July of 2012, directly for it. So the apocalyptic predictions weren't actually too far off. And what ended up happening, because we're still here right now, obviously, this was an extinction level event headed our way. And by the time it got close to the moon, it all of a sudden, it was going straight, and then it got bumped. The only word David Adair could explain was that it looked like it got bumped. And then it went from being directly impacting into the Earth to going just between the moon and the Earth, which is a very close miss. Like, we just dodged a bullet, literally. And the thing is we didn't really even dodge it. We got somebody or something clearly kind of came in and just intervened and bumped this thing. So it didn't destroy this world. And he always says, if that isn't a sign that we are actually being looked out for by these ETs, and those predictions by the Mayans and, the Hopi and a lot of the doomsdayers weren't actually too far off, because that thing was headed our way. And we were kind of on borrowed time. And, if you believe this story and if you kind of go into it, but I always thought it was pretty fascinating to hear this from a rocket scientist who's privy to pretty incredible information. So there's a quick little thing about 2012 and how we are now, fortunately, in the age of Aquarius with all of our civilizations still intact. Thankfully, what a gift. We should take advantage of that.
I love that you say intact. I guess it's mostly intact.
Well, that's a relative term.
I know. As we're recording this, Israel and Gaza are at war.
Intact is maybe not the best word to use.
Anyway,
it's crumbling, but in a way that is needed. We can't
look at the part of it that's crumbling, right? It's the old school. It's the three-dimensional consciousness that's crumbling.
Yeah. The warring, the pitting against each other consciousness is dying.
Yeah. I mean, there are Palestinians, because in Israel and Palestine, as a male, you're conscripted. It's automatic. After high school, you go into service. And there are veterans who get together and cross, the barriers to meet, sometimes secretly, in men's groups where they, as military veterans from Gaza, from Palestine, from Israel, sit down and meet one another as men, as human beings, right? And they do this because it's important. I wish I could find a citation for that. It was an amazing story when I read it, and it was years ago now. So,
powerful, isn't it?
This is happening right now, people. It's part of how the shift is taking place. And while the old consciousness wants us to focus on how bad it is, there's new consciousness stuff out there. It's Indigenous Peoples Day, which is an amazing thing. Finally, our government, America, decided to recognize not Columbus Day, but an Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a step in the right direction. And just today, although he's got no chance of winning as far as I can tell, Robert Kennedy announced that he's becoming independent and stepping away from the duopoly of American politics. Whether or not he wins, it's an important move.
Yeah.
To be able to say, no, the duopoly is not serving us, and here's why.
The old systems are dying. I mean,
the old systems are dying.
That guy's a diehard Democrat from clearly.
His family's 100 years old of Democrats, right?
And so if anyone to get out of that party being a Kennedy, I mean, that's like, I don't think any Kennedy would have ever predicted that, but that just shows you where we're at and how up is down, down is up, and everything is just literally flip-flopping right now because we're in a massive, massive transformational journey as a consciousness, as a planet, and as a species. It's all happening at the same time, and it's incredible, but it comes with growing pains, and these are the obvious growing pains, and we'll be experiencing more, in the next coming years, and that's okay. It comes with, I personally feel, a much, much, much more beautiful future, because this idea, I think one of the things that we're the most scared of is change. Change is scary.
Yeah, change is hard.
But it's the only constant in this universe. And, to embrace that change, and again, these ancient practices, like, don't fight the river of change. Go with the river, ride that river. Let's ride the change and see where it can take us. And if we learn to just embrace it, then we get to surf the change and have fun with the change and play with the change, and the change becomes like exhilarating. It becomes life affirming and incredible, and it's like a choose your own adventure, and you never know where it's going to end up. And that's the beauty of life. It's the most incredible book, video game you'll have ever read or played.
It's not even virtual reality. It's better.
Yeah.
I think you've
Yeah.
said this before about how we're social creatures. Human beings are social creatures. And we've spent, I don't know, a few hundred years now trying to be individuals. And the end game of that has gotten us to where we are right now. So if you look around the world and you see things you don't like, well, that's the end game of individuality. Look around the world and see what's working. You're going to see the end or the renewed interest in society, in small groups and wherever two or more are gathered, right? Reaching out to the Christian audience on that one. But the metaphor here is aligned with science. Like we're scientifically hardwired to be social creatures, not hardwired to be loners and
And
independents
isolated.
and
We're not meant
isolated.
to.
Yeah, it's not us.
No.
That didn't work. We tried it in the pandemic, right? With the big, we can't say that word, with the big everybody stay home for 2 years. We're not
That
going to
thing.
talk about that. Yeah, that thing that happened.
I got to look at the guidelines. Not that I want to follow any of them, but just so we can slightly stay on YouTube here.
Yeah, when C plus came along and gave us all an extended vacation.
That was a great.
So that social thing is so important, and it's difficult because two people can do it pretty well, but you add a third person, and all of a sudden things get dicey, and you've got to vote. You've got to decide how to do things. And I'm tying this all back to Indigenous peoples because a lot of what we know about First Nations in North America, anyway, and in some other cultures as well, is that they never did anything as a group until everybody agreed. Right? That was part of the deal. It's like, if you're going to be part of our society, all of us are going to go in this. We're going to build a bridge across a river. We're going to all do it together. Everybody's in. We're all in. We're going to move the whole camp, 20 miles away where there's better fish. Everybody's in. So that's new. That's the thing that is new, and it's going to be tough to let go of the community guidelines, but it's not impossible. I think we can all recognize in the world right now that whatever you're going to call it, temperatures are rising, and we probably ought to do something about that together as a people, right? Like all the people of the world. And I think if we did that, we get along pretty well and figure out how to do it. Didn't they announce the MacArthur Awards just last week? And the Nobel Prizes are being announced right now. And there's a trend there toward things that are good for the world. Discoveries that are world changing, that affect everyone. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as we go forward here. I'd love to see that groups wind up competing for the Nobel Prize. And sometimes 2 or 3 scientists get it, but like the whole of, whatever research team winds up the way that we do in the Oscars, right? When you get a best picture and everybody jumps up on stage together that's been in the picture, right?
Like Lord of the Rings.
Like Lord of the Rings, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that community is really, within entertainment anyway, it's always been there. We'd have some solo acts, but with entertainment, generally, it's the whole band, or the whole orchestra, or the whole cast, right? So I love that the inflection toward that community is coming through the arts, right? Through the groups of painters, the groups of sculptors throughout the years that have helped move us toward a better place. And the groups of musicians, right? Who are doing that too. Man, you are Mr. Collaboration right now when it comes to what you're doing with music, Chris, and that's amazing to me.
And again, it's just like that's just the product of this kind of new world. It feels that they've just been the easiest things to put together. It's been easier than doing things individually for me right now, at least. And since I'm transitioning to offer new things with music and kind of evolving that part of my career, and I don't even really know where it's fully going, much like anything in life. And I find the easiest way to do that for myself is through collaboration for so many reasons. And it makes it easier, more fun, lighter, more feasible, logistically less weight to pull. More people can come because there's just more network that is then available, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not that everything needs to be a collab, but we're moving into this energy, into this kind of world where collaborations are just going to be absolutely the norm, the default, because it's also, if you can take collaboration in terms of a work related example, it proliferates into other areas of your life, and these work things just form into friendships. I mean, most of the things I'm working on are all with friends or with people that we had a mutual interest in creating an event like this, and now they become a friend because of the creation of the event. So, right? It's a beautiful cycle.
Science is so supportive of this too. Um, it's like an invitation. So the science is that the music you love is your most powerful music, right? It doesn't say love your music and isolate everybody else. The invitation there is the music that you love is your invitation to reach out to someone else and connect with them on an emotional level, right? On a creative level, and everything below the head, right? Head
Yeah.
says, I'm different, and here's why, and this is me, and stay away, and because you're not like me. And so, but when you get below the head, all of a sudden the openness is there for the connection that takes place. And musicians, music are leading us there, as well as those of us who are able to ignore protocols and clinical stuff and all of that other, kind of, it's useful, don't get me wrong. But when I come at you and I say, I'm going to music you, and this is the music for you, and I'm going to fix, problem X with this music, I'm blowing it, because that's not the science. The music is that whatever is the music in you is going to fix you. And my job is to bring it out of you, to get you to connect with that music that you love. And that just changes everything right there.
And you're teaching people how they can find that for themselves, which is an empowering tool too. So it's something where, you're not trying to create a customer for life like a lot of pharmaceuticals. you're trying
like a lot of drug dealers. We can still call them drug dealers without getting banned, right?
That's what they are by definition. And like, this is the opposite. It's empowerment. It's putting the power within you, the person, the individual, of course, the group and everything like that. But it's to put the power back into the people, into the person. And
absolutely,
and the answers are never outside of you. Never. It's always within you. You always know the best answer for anything that's going on in your life. And it's just, you might have inspiration as to what that could be through exterior things.
Plant medicines.
Exactly. Music,
right?
men's groups, whatever. Breathwork. My God, the amount of downloads I've had from breathwork. So just you try those things. They're great. But at the end of the day, yeah, it all comes down to love and connection, and that's who we are at the core.
There you go.
We're beings of love. We are beings of connection, and we feel that the brain can forget that, because the brain is what gets programmed to think and believe certain stories since day one of your life, and those take time to reprogram. Like, you can, but they take time. So in the meantime, while that is racing around in your brain, telling you what to think, you get out of the brain, get into your heart and the rest of your body, for that matter, and it will tell you a very different story. And it will also probably calm you down a little bit.
Oh, definitely. Right. The moment you let go of the head brain stuff, other things come in.
Where a lot of stress lives is in the mind.
Yeah.
Us, at least in the modern Western world.
Yeah. We're not using it as effectively as we could be. Right. Because we're focusing on that hemisphere of the brain that is all about stress and worry. And there's a whole other half of the brain that's kind of unused.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us full circle right back to the whole masculine, feminine, left brain, right brain. The need for intuition and creativity and vulnerability and understanding that is, not been in vogue for several hundred years now. And in certain parts of the world is still not in vogue, but maybe making a comeback. It's a tough transition to live, because we've got to be willing to stand up for things like peace, which politically is a very difficult position to take. But practically, unless we work together, we got problems here, folks. We got to solve these things together.
Before we sign off on our show, I'm going to quickly do a screen share, if that's okay, Bill, because I wanted to show the just a very basic, just a basic breakdown on the masculine and feminine energies. And,
yes, awesome idea.
Just to give you guys a visual here, we're looking at yin and yang, which is, again, this is ancient Eastern. There we go. I can zoom in here. Ancient Eastern practices or teachings. So we've got the yin, which is feminine, Of course, you got the yin and yang symbol. And look at just the symbol of yin and yang for a moment here. On the left side, which is the feminine, you've got white, but then you've also got that little circle of black in the feminine, which means we're always a mixture of both. Even if we're all on that feminine side and identify as a feminine energy on all fronts, we're always going to have that element of masculine. And this is why it's so important to balance both and not hate on either side, loving both, finding unity and connection through both. Let's just quickly read out for the listening audience some of the traits that come in a feminine energy. Now, I'm not talking feminine body, feminine energy, which we all have. Think about it as well as your right brain. So we've got things like patience, more passive, more of an internal energy, more introspection, compassion, nurturing. Like we said, right brain, which also means more intuitive, your intuition, those feelings of knowing that come. That's all yin, feminine, creativity, quality, synchronicity. And then the unhealed sides of that are more excess or needy or confusion or depression. Then there's the other side, yang, masculine. We've got active energy, more external energy, more assertion, valor, dominating, initiating. Left brain, more logical. And when we say initiating, masculine energy, what's wonderful with masculine, which is why, again, you always balance this within yourself, no matter what way you identify. When you want to go take action on something, that's masculine energy. When you want to take a step back and come to a new understanding of things, be more introspective, that's feminine energy. Just another example of the balance and why we clearly need both. Certainty, quantity, cause and effect. And then in excess or in an unhealed way, this could feel like forcing it or being rigid or too much domination or anxiety. Forcing, that was a masculine trait I had to really work on for myself. I forced too many things in my younger days, and it just wouldn't come to be. I needed to get more of my feminine and allow more of these things to come in. And that took a long time for me to learn. So anyway, quick little breakdown for you beautiful people watching and listening.
I'm so good with this because here we are being exposed as a people, as a society and worldwide to something we've never been exposed to before, at least not in recent history, which is the fluidity of gender.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the expression of qualities, of the expression of divine masculine, the expression of divine feminine, it's open season, right? You can choose to express anything you want. And if you're not expressing some things and you're hitting the wall, maybe look at the attributes of your opposite gender that might make a change in that way. And I'm not saying become gender fluid. I'm saying maybe hook up with a gender fluid friend and say, hey, I'm having trouble as a man, as a guy, expressing this attribute of feminine power, and help me, right? Because if nothing else, transgender people have been dealing with the combination of both, often for a lifetime and often in distressing situations. But when they've come to a place where they can integrate, they have information that's powerful for all the rest of us. So the next time you have trip over your pronouns, remember that you're doing it for a good reason. And that there are people who are amazing in the world who might be able to help you the next time you're stuck in your gender and trying to figure out how to go forward.
And gender is also, to go even deeper, gender is one of the 12 hermetic principles of ancient wisdom that's been handed down since literally ancient Egypt. So gender nowadays is highly politicized as just a word in of itself. But the word itself actually just talks about energy. It doesn't even really get into the physicality differences, which are important, especially in hospitals and stuff like that. But obviously, this is a much bigger topic. It's a topic of energy, and that's why I really wanted to show the yin and yang there, because the ancients actually didn't really typically ever categorize your sexual orientation: straight, bi, lesbian, whatever, gay. All of
it wasn't.
It didn't exist. And one of the things that my friend, who technically he would identify as bi, but he doesn't like to identify as anything, because for him, he grew up gay, but then bi, but then now kind of has dissolved those labels, because for him, he really does, depending on where he's at, sometimes he's feeling more like attracted to the divine feminine, sometimes he's more attracted to the divine masculine, and whatever body that energy seems to reside in, male or female or something in between, it just doesn't seem to matter to him. So he just is quite fluid with that. But the reason he doesn't like to put an actual category on his orientation is because for him it limits it, because then he doesn't get to express that full spectrum. And I think the ancients were a lot more on that side, where they're like, let's just not put ourselves into a box here and let all of it just be human.
Yes.
You're just kind of living. You're just
Yes.
kind of, and this is where these Spartan, samurai, ancient indigenous warring techniques, all of them being very similar, you'd have these men who would sometimes, many times, have wives back at home having these same-sex erotic male bonding exercises with men in their tribe. Sometimes it would even move into a sexual side where there'd be like some sexual tantric healing that sometimes would happen with some of these men, warriors, before going into battle. Sometimes it wouldn't. Again, we're very fluid depending on the men. But a lot of the shamans that usually were men would typically would date both man and female. And because sometimes the energy of an individual, this is coming from my friend who is kind of in that spectrum. This is not my experience, it's his experience. What he's told me is that when you're more in that middle spectrum of your sexual orientation, it actually allows you to be the most understanding of both sides, which is why they would usually become the shaman or the teacher of the tribe, because they could understand the man and the female very similarly, because they kind of moved into both worlds very often. And so that's also an interesting trait that these shamans would take on. And so it just kind of shows you once again this very more open-minded, I guess, or larger way of looking at what we're talking nowadays as gender. We can really bring it back to energy at the end of it, because this is all energy. We're all energy. This physical form is 99.9% empty space anyway. It's a beautiful thing, bless all of the beautiful bodies that we all have. And at the same time, it's all energy.
It's all energy. So let's close with an offer here. And this is something I haven't discussed this with Chris, but you'll be on board with it. If your men's group, women's group, trans group, whatever, if your group wants to explore this idea of the divine gender attributes more in depth, reach out to us. We can do this kind of stuff remotely. You can do it in person too. But if you want to do some breath work that's focused in this area, you want to do some music work that's focused in this area, we're here to help and happy to do that. So, drop us a note in the comments. You can find us, hook up with us in the show notes. I should be careful on how I use it. You can find us and connect with us in the show notes.
These YouTube guidelines really got us walking on eggshells, don't they?
This is a God. If this podcast is still up, reach out. I mean, because that's ultimately our job as musicians, is to help you to find the beautiful person inside that you are and to draw that out. That's what music is all about.
These are always great. I appreciate you co-hosting with me as always, my friend.
Yeah. Love you, brother. And keep up the good work, man. We got this.
We got this. Love you too, man. And much love to all my brothers out there and sisters and all walks of life, however you identify. I love you no matter what.
No matter what. Aho, everybody.
Aho.